Alrighty. I want to welcome everybody out here today for joining us on a Saturday afternoon. I know that you could have been at some other places, but you chose to be here, so we're very thankful for that. Today, we're going to be talking about the challenges that the students face with the SAT prep. Before we do that, I would just like to quickly introduce myself and our panelists out here. My name is Shweta Suratkar. I lead the marketing efforts at Turito, and I also help with hiring of new tutors at Turito. As you all are aware, Turito is an e-learning platform, and we offer test prep as well as one-on-one tutoring online across the US. And we also have classes for students who are internationally placed, so outside US as well. We will go a little bit in depth with Turito eventually, but for now, I would like to introduce to you all our two panelists here today who are actually tutors with us. The first panelist we have is Anya. She is our English tutor. She's been with us for over a year now. Anya, am I right? Or close to a year?
Almost a year.
Almost a year, yeah. And she has been tutoring for over 15 years and has experience in many different exams. She's tutored close to 1,000 students, including all kinds of exams, including the test prep, SAT, ACT, ICE, SSATs, and she teaches with us the SAT English part of it. So thank you, Anya, for being here, and welcome to the webinar.
My pleasure. I'm very excited to participate.
Yeah, me too. So the next one we have is Laila. She is also a very experienced tutor with us. She's been here almost the same tenure as Anya. She teaches math section for us at Turito. We will get into depth as to why, when I say math and English, why we're separating it out. I'll come to that in a bit. Laila has a very vast experience as well. She's been, she has an international experience. Actually, she is from Hong Kong, so she's aware of how the schooling works internationally as well as in US. So she gets the experience from both the sides of the world. She's currently a tutor at a private school in California, and she has experience of over 10 years tutoring for different exams, including SAT, ACT, test preps, and the APs and other private school exams, including the SSATs and the PSATs. So yeah, welcome, Laila. Thank you for joining us. We are very glad to have her on board. These two are one of our students, one of our favorites of our students. So we are really looking forward to the chat. The way we would go with this webinar is we're going to keep it. I will be walking everybody through the slides. That's going to be my job. And the first off, we will have Anya. We'll talk about the challenges that the students face. Then we will have Laila, who will talk about the English, the math, part of what the challenges we students face and how we can overcome it. And then eventually we will open up for a Q&A where you can ask questions directly to, you can type in your questions and I can direct it to either Anya or Laila, or if you have any questions related to Turito, you can direct it to me. All right. So let's begin. I am going to put my video off, and then I'll get it going. And once again, welcome everybody. All right, so today we'll talk about test prep challenges. So we spoke about this being SAT, ACT. When we're talking about SAT, we're actually also going to be talking about ACT. What we're going to cover today is what is Turito, what are these test prep exams, what are the challenges when we talk about the test prep. And one of the reasons why we talk about challenges is that they are part of all the process of getting ready for the exam, what kind of difficulties or issues, and we will be highlighting those. Some of them include pacing and vocabulary, anxiety, Our tutors will go in depth with those, and will also give you tips on how to address these mistakes that kids make. Sometimes they're silly mistakes, maybe out of pressure, how to avoid those, and a way that Turito can help out in avoiding those mistakes as well. And then, as I said, in the end, we will open up for the Q&A. A very short introduction about Turito. We do offer classes apart from US and Canada. We also have classes across the globe. I did mention that earlier. We have classes in Middle East, India, Singapore, Australia. We do native exams out there. We do have some students, in Middle East and India who actually do prepare for test prep, SAT ACTs in the US, wanting to come to the US to take the bachelor's exam. So we do have classes for that. We also do foundation courses. We have started AP courses, so lots more courses going on. The test prep courses are mini groups, so our teachers teach in groups of 5 to 10 kids. It's all online, typically about 3.5 months. It's a very dedicated curriculum every week. There are new topics that these teachers teach, and there's a lot of follow-up in terms of the exams, practice tests and resources that are available to the kids as well to practice. So these are some of the exclusives that Turito offers. And one thing that we also have is the parent app, wherein the parents also have access to what the kids will be doing. This is something which we're launching very soon. That way, as a parent, you can keep an eye on what and how the student, your kid is performing. So that also really helps. Okay. All righty. So now the next, I think the screen is, oh, there we go. Okay, so what is SAT? Just in case, or what is a SAT ACT? What is that? It's an exam that the kids in the US and Canada give, usually in high school. And if I miss anything, please, Laila and Anya, feel free to point out eventually when you talk, since you guys are the subject matter expert when it comes to that. So these exams currently, in spite of being optional, are still considered as a standard for kids to get into some of the prestigious schools as well as universities. At a bachelor level, they are offered 6 times a year, and they are multiple choice. You have to still go and give a paper pencil test. Basically what it does is it measures the high school students' readiness for college, and they are divided into math and English. And in math, we have one section with calculator, one without. And in the English, they'll test your essays and writing and vocabulary, reading, comprehension. Those subjects are tested in these exams. And then you get an overall score out of 1600 that counts towards your application to the college. So that's a brief about what the SAT is. We already went over this. I have introduced you guys to our tutors. So we have Anya here and we have Laila. And let's start with I'm going to hand this over to Anya, who's going to talk about the challenges and why we are talking about why these are important, because you could do as much as prep as possible, as much as practice as possible. But these are the things that are really important and key. And Anya, all yours.
All right, thank you. So I've been tutoring SAT and ACT test prep for 15 years, maybe a little bit longer at this point. And these are issues that I see come up over and over, regardless of the length of preparation that students spend working with me. Pacing is almost always an issue. I have a lot of students who struggle to finish sections within the time allotted, mostly related to the test anxiety. They find themselves spending a lot of time on really challenging questions, and then running out of time towards the end of the test. So my approach to that is to try to take a holistic approach when I teach critical reading. I'm also teaching grammar. The two are definitely related. I also teach critical thinking and problem solving skills, pattern recognition. So recognize the types of questions that get asked, words that come up over and over. The more practice passages that students do, the more they're going to recognize what sort of things to look for. I will usually introduce several different types of strategies for students. So it may be, start with the hard passages first, start with the easy passages first, preview the questions before you read the passage, skimming versus scanning, and then I will work with the students to identify which strategies will work best for them. Obviously, the way the SAT is set up, there's only going to be so much time allowed for each question. So there is a way to allot, 2 minutes per passage, 1 minute per question. But if students are constantly checking their watches or their phones watches or the clock for pacing, that can eat up into some of the time. So I would rather that students know the material, they know their grammar rules, they understand how to read a passage, and they go in knowing that they are going to be able to get through the passage quickly, understand the main idea, understand the questions, and answer them appropriately. For that, it mostly does honestly just take a lot of practice. So the more in advance of the test day that students start preparing, the better it is going to be for them, so that they can try to take as many practice tests as possible under test-like conditions. So find a quiet place, an uninterrupted place, and devote the time to taking the test the way they're going to be taking it on test day, so that they can get used to the rhythm and the pacing for the test. Another issue that I frequently encounter is vocabulary. This is a really, really challenging one to tackle, because vocabulary is something that is acquired pretty much through the entire, the student's entire lifetime. My best recommendation is always that students should read as much as possible. It's very, very challenging to teach them vocabulary in like the 2 months before test day. They can memorize word lists with definitions, but I don't find that to be very productive. And so I recommend that they do as many reading passages as possible. Look up unfamiliar vocabulary words as they're doing the reading passages, and keep track of the words that they encounter often. I would recommend that even before they start test prep, they start reading, they can read articles online from the New York Times, the Atlantic, the New Yorker, any high-level publication that has really good vocabulary. These are a lot of sources that the SAT draws passages from. We do go over some vocabulary strategies. So we look at root words, suffixes, prefixes. We try to, we try to look at multiple definitions of words. There are a couple of strategies that I advise my students. The SAT is probably not going to test you on really easy vocabulary. So if it's a familiar looking word, the obvious definition is probably not the definition they're looking for. So we do talk about a few strategies for vocabulary, but again, I think the best thing that students can do to boost their vocabulary and their critical reading skills is just to practice reading a lot. I've had a lot of students tell me that they're not really big readers. They don't really enjoy reading, which I think is going to make it very challenging for them to do well on the test, not only on the test, but also in college. So I would encourage parents and students, encourage your students to make an effort to read, whether it's, find an article online that they find interesting. If they prefer audiobooks, get a real copy of the book and read along with the book so that they can see the words, how they're spelled, how they're pronounced. That's just the best thing to do. It'll also help them with the grammar section, because they will start to see how punctuation is used in writing. They will, be better able to parse meaning that way. As far as test anxiety, this one is also very challenging to deal with, because there's so much weight that's put on standardized test scores. And this has been true for over a decade at this point. So students are used to it with standardized testing in schools, but at this point, they've heard a lot about how this is a make or break test. Either they get into their dream college or they don't. And so a lot of students will be no matter how well prepared they are, they may end up still experiencing test anxiety. And this leads to a lot of mistakes on the actual test where they do really well on the practice test and they get to test day and they forget all of the strategies that they've learned. So I do a few study skills in the course of the SAT prep course. I do have a list of recommendations for students to follow the week of the test to get ready for test day. A lot of it is involves mindfulness. So being aware of their internal reactions, their physiological reactions, and taking steps to reduce their levels of anxiety so that they have better recall of the strategies that we've gone over. Additionally, there have been a few studies that have identified test anxiety and performance. They've mostly concluded that students experience test anxiety when they don't feel prepared. So our work is to prepare students as best as we can. Obviously, the more time we have to prepare them, the better. The more practice tests they take, the more familiar they become with the tests, the better, so that they can go into test day feeling confident that they know the material. With frequent practice, students get to identify common mistakes that they make. I do a lot of focus on pattern recognition, so recognize what sort of things you are commonly missing, what sort of mistakes you're commonly making, and take proactive steps to remedy those mistakes before you get to the real test. The practice tests are the best opportunities for them to make those mistakes and learn from them without them impacting their college application process. So that's an overview of how I try to approach the verbal section and address some of these issues as I'm working with students. As I said, I try to take a very holistic approach. So I do a lot of scaffolding work and try to make sure that students start from very, very beginning, foundational stuff, and then build their way up so that they see how everything ties together.
Thank you, Anya. So that was about the English section. We will come to questions. If you have any questions for her, feel free to type them into the chat. I will take them over to her once we are done with the entire presentation. Next, we'll have Laila, who will talk about the math related the math section challenges. And Laila, you can tell me when you want me to move the slides and I can do that. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that to you, but Laila, you can tell me and I can just move the slides for you.
Okay, so welcome everyone. I teach math. Actually, I'm a math teacher at a school in Northern California. So I see a lot of the differences that when you're learning math, from a textbook or, in class, and you do the different steps of math, especially for geometry and algebra, that you have a certain method of learning. You are learning to comprehend concepts, work with formulas and functions. However, in the SAT, it's more about strategy. Yes, you do need to know the math. Of course you do. And they give you your standard formulas, your basic formulas. However, it is more technique and strategy on how to get the answer. So the first thing that students have to get used to with math, because, at school, the teacher's like, you need to write all your work down, show all your steps. Well, that's not what you have time to do or what you should be doing for the SAT or the ACT. You don't have time to do all the steps. In fact, some of the time you're going to be backward solving. So if we look at the first point of following steps, Shweta, if we could go to the first one, please. The next slide. Thank you. So you have to understand that there are steps to a problem. However, what the SAT does is everything is 2 to 3 steps. If you're not doing at least 2 steps in your math problems, you have not done the work. Some of them are 3 steps, and that's the ones that they put most of the traps in. So they'll have the right wrong answer, which you'll get after 2 steps, but however, they're asking you to do one additional thing. So those are the 3-step problems. They come in, the SAT and ACT are both very kind about the way that they have it set up. So with all your questions, we'll start with the ACT. The first 20 questions are quick, what we call quick questions. They should not take you more than a minute. Think of it as basic concepts that you learn in 9th and 10th grade. They also are ones that you can do in 1 to 2 steps. They're also ones that are easy to solve backward solving, meaning that you could take the answer choices and plug them in very quickly and see if they work. Those are the questions. And the great part about having those questions right away is it helps the student switch from the English sections to the math sections, kind of gives them a warm up of the brain, kind of switching into the math. And that's how students should see it. Like those ones should be very quick. Those ones should be very strategic. Like I can answer these. They are not made difficult. They are made to allow students to reach a certain score. The questions that follow after that, and with the SAT and the ACT, it's different that the SAT has calculator sections and non-calculator sections, where the ACT, you have a calculator section. However, you really don't actually need a calculator for either one. I always find that teaching the SAT without using a calculator is better because a student becomes stronger in their math skills, but also it's time consuming to use a calculator for every single problem. And you don't need it, like just basic addition, subtractions, multiplications. Those should be something that students practice daily and should have been practicing over their years in high school. When it says write down all the steps, what we literally mean is we don't want you to write down all the steps like you would do if you were doing it as a problem in school. You're actually writing down the steps of what they're asking you to do. So you're writing down the steps in that you're breaking down the question. Okay, the question is asking me this. So in order to get to this, I need to do A and B first. That's what we mean by writing down the steps. So if you don't do A and B, and like I said, everything is at least 2 steps, then you are not going to be able to find the answer choice. And it's a multiple choice test. So the answer is right there. And of course, they have the right wrong answer, which is the one that if you make one slight calculation or do one step wrong, you're going to land on that answer choice. And that's when we say, go back to your steps, review it, and see which one is the correct one. You don't have time to do these questions more than once. It is a significant number of math questions, but like I said, the first 20 are the ones that you're supposed to do very, very quickly. And then the rest of them, you're supposed to give yourselves between 30 seconds to a minute to complete. If you're doing everything that's in the question, like you do step 1, like it says, let's think of a question, find which one of these quadratic equations match the graph. Well, for that, you know that there's basic steps, like you've got to find where it crosses the x-axis, the y-axis. And if you do those 2 steps, you should be able to find your answer choice right away. If your answer choice is not there, like you did your calculations and it's just not there, it means that you probably did step 2 wrong. I find that to be the most common. Like students seem to get the first step correct. It's the second step of getting to the final answer that really needs review if you can't find your answer choice. But again, it's a different strategy. You're learning to recognize the questions. You're learning that these questions require you to do this, this, and this. And these questions repeat consistently in all the tests. Like you're going to see the same set of questions. So practicing them over and over again and knowing right away, this question is asking this, these are the 3 steps or 2 steps that I need to do it. Could we go to the next slide, please? So I always recommend know your formulas. if you know your formulas and you practice your formulas, you will not have to be dependent on looking for them. When they're complex formulas, like if there's any math, and even if it's math in the science section, they will give you that formula. You will not have to know it. Like if it's a special function that you have to do something, or an exponential decrease problem or increase problem, they will give you those. However, the basic formulas, they only give you 9 formulas, and they are very, very basic. You'll get 4 from geometry, 2 from algebra, and 2 from algebra 2. So it is up to the student to learn the concepts and the formula. We highly recommend flashcards. You can memorize the formulas to save time. We have these special cheat sheets that we call them, where every possible formula that you're going to encounter will show up. When we actually teach it in the Turito way, we teach each concept, each formula, and each set of questions that match that formula and that concept. And we do several, like about 25 for each concept, repeated questions with different numbers, questions written slightly differently, so that the student immediately recognizes, okay, I need to use this formula. I need to do this for these sets of questions. So again, it's practice, 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 connecting the questions to your formula and functions. And the beautiful part of that Turito, and it's actually my favorite part, which is why I like working for Turito, is how everything is split up into basic concepts, next step concepts, advanced concepts. So it's almost like, okay, here's the basic concepts. These are going to come up in your first 20 questions. Here's the more advanced concepts. These will come up in the next 20 to 40 questions. And these are your advanced ones. So let's work and practice the advanced ones, which come up in your last 20 questions in your SAT. And I cannot emphasize how important it is to practice, practice, practice. These questions are not different. You're going to see the same types of questions over and over again. So if you know your formulas, you know your functions, and you practice, you will be able to recognize these questions right away and be like, oh, they're asking me to find the area, and then they want me to find the area outside of the shape instead of inside the shape. Could we go to the last slide, please? So they like to give you very wordy problems, and they will throw in ridiculous things like Javier and Francois decide to go on a journey and things like that. And then students get stuck on all these words and like, is that a name? What is that? What I always say is the first thing you do when you get a word problem, underline what the question is asking. That's always at the end of the question. Then go back and pull out anything that is a number, which could be in words or it could just be given as numbers. Ignore all the other blah, 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 because it's literally blah, blah, blah. And it's to make a student, slow down, stop. But students don't need to get stuck on these word problems. They honestly, they're asking you one thing to do, and they will give you everything that you need to do that problem. So I say, if you see a name, ignore it. Make everybody Joe, because they are going to try and throw you off with complicated names. They are going to try and throw you off with calling it a mini home when really you're just finding the area of the house. And pacing yourself. The hardest part is pacing yourself through these word problems, because students tend to think, oh my God, that's 6 lines that I have to read, and then I have to do the math. Well, no, you actually just have to read the last line and pull out all the data that you need to complete that problem. Practice tests are so, so important, but not just practicing a test as a whole, but practicing tests in sections by concepts, which is what Turito does. And then once you've accomplished or feel confident in those concepts, then take a full test and pace yourself. Say, okay, for the first 20 questions, I'm giving myself 20 minutes and that's it. If I don't finish in the 20 minutes, I'll come back to it. Then I'm giving myself for the next 20 questions, I'm giving myself 30 minutes. And so forth. Pacing is very important. Trying not to write down every little step is important, that you do understand that you should be doing these in 2 or 3 steps. If you're taking more than that, you're not doing the problem. Knowing your basic concepts and your formulas is important. Like I said, they don't give them to you. They give you just the basic ones. And then knowing to understand SAT and ACT's favorite questions. They have a bunch of questions that are always, always, always on the test in different ways, different numbers, worded slightly differently, but they're the SAT, ACT formats. And if you've been following your math courses at school, they're basically the accomplish benchmark questions. So what you would need to know after 9th grade, what you would need to know after 10th grade math, 11th grade math, 12th grade math, and so forth. And that's pretty much the SAT in a nutshell. Again, the first part is quick questions. Then you come into more step questions that require 2 steps. At the end, they give you the 3 steps one. So they're actually giving you the pacing as you go as well. And then, yes, just feel confident, do these problems confidently. A lot of them are just plug and chug, as we call them, where you can take the answer choices and do it. A lot of them are just plug in your own choice of numbers, like you 2 or 3, and when they don't give you the numbers and it's all variables, and you can usually solve them. And we do a lot of daily practice. I've noticed less anxiety on the math. Overall, I think students, because math is something that you practice daily at school, there's more confidence in it. But it really is just practice. And let's face it, there's always the portion of students that think do not like math. I have plenty of them in my class. So one of the things that we do at Turito, and we do it through the practice, is get students feeling comfortable with the math. So I get it, you don't like math, but let's make you comfortable with it. Let's make you more confident with it, so that even though for you, this is like, oh, it's math, you will feel like, oh, it's math, I can do this. And that's it. If you have any questions, just please let me know at the end.
Thank you so much, Laila. Thank you, Anya. Yeah, so we will definitely be opening up for questions after this slide. Both our tutors have actually summed up very well what Turito offers, and what makes it stand out from the other test prep services out there is that we actually we do have some of the top SAT experts teaching the students who have in-depth knowledge of the subjects that they've been teaching for years and years. They have very strong conceptual understanding, very strong foundation when it comes to different concepts that are taught, that are tested on these exams. We also focus a lot more on how to be strategic in terms of your test taking, and not just going out there and trying to quickly memorize and go and give exam, because that's not typically the way these would work. You would really need to be, as we kept saying throughout the presentation, pace yourself, take your test, make sure you practice. And we do a lot of those practice tests. In fact, we do a lot of practice tests even between the different subjects and course concepts that we teach. So not that, and the student has access to their portal where they can go in and they can access everything all the way back to when they started taking the classes. They can actually only take tests on certain concepts and then eventually come and take the entire practice test. So yes, so it's a very handhold learning process. We do work a lot with students just before the exam as well, in case they have any last moment questions and dilemmas that they want to sort out. And we do have those sessions as well with the tutors, plus the parent app, which helps parents to know how the kids are doing, which is very important for us and the parents to know that they know how the progress of the child is happening. And that we have a smaller batches, so it's not a big 20-kid class where tutors are not able to pay attention. So it's a very small class, and it's an individualized attention to everybody. So yeah, so that's about it for us. I will be opening up I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I'm actually going to open up this for question and answer session as well. So if you have any questions, please, you can type it out here, and I can actually, start asking these people about it, our panelists about it. Yeah. Okay, let's see. We have, yes, we can send the recording. We have some people asking about the recordings, if we will be sharing them. Yes, we will be sharing the recordings. Okay. So this is one very question that we have. We get it at all our webinars, at all the events that we attend. When we talk about start early, how early? So we have one attendee asking, what school grade should a prep test start for the average student? Anya, I know you've started answering. Do you want to answer that question, please, Anya?
Yes. So as I mentioned in my chat reply, it really depends on the student. Some students will obviously need a lot more test prep than others. They'll need to spend a little bit more time getting ready because, they may have fallen behind in school, or they may have learning styles that are that make normal test prep challenging, and so we may need to spend a little bit more time making accommodations for them. Generally speaking, though, I recommend that students, at the very minimum, plan to devote at least 3 months to prep. Some may want to take more time, some may take as much as 6 months, but at least 3 months. I find that when it's a little bit less than that, necessarily you have to start leaving some things out and deciding what's not going to be covered. Also, 3 months is a really good amount of time to get students to do enough practice tests and have tutors grade them and go over them and focus on things that they're still struggling with so that they can be more prepared for tests. If you have a student who does really, really well in school, and your student is trying to get in a National Merit Scholar, National Honor Society, and you want to prepare them for the Duke TIP Talent Identification Program, that's given in the 7th grade. So I would recommend maybe the beginning of 7th grade. If you start them in 6th grade, it can be a little bit challenging because there's still going to be college level vocabulary words. There's still going to be math on there. So it may not be quite as beneficial to start them quite that early.
Okay. And any test prep books that you tutors would recommend? We have a question about that as well. What are some test prep books? Any books, any resources that they can, free resources maybe that they're available, as well as some books that would be recommended?
I'm not sure if Laila has a specific recommendation for math. I know that parents usually
Actually, for math, the College Board SAT Prep one is pretty much the best one. But again, what I would recommend is you can just download free past tests and just use them for practice. As for free books, there are not very many out there. You're going to get these huge books that have so much material packed into it, which is why I find that most students, they might read a quarter of it, but I think doing courses, prep courses, is more effective than getting the books and trying to study through them, because students get lost, they get overwhelmed with the amount of material in them. And a lot of the wording and everything in those books, half the time, all they're doing is explaining, which won't make sense unless you're practicing. So they literally get bogged down by all this. Oh, I have to do this. It's explaining this. I'm only on chapter 2. So I would say, get maybe one book, but if you're going to get a book, use it just for practicing questions, not really from studying from.
Okay.
Test prep courses are the best way to go for those.
Perfect. We have one grammar related question. How can you prepare for grammar portion of SAT?
Again, I would recommend that students do as much reading as possible, and there are some pitfalls to that because obviously there are a lot of publications out there that don't employ correct grammar. But reading is still probably the best way for students to familiarize themselves with conventional grammar rules. When I teach the verbal section, as I said, I tend to take a holistic approach. So when I teach critical reading, I point out how grammar is applied so that students can break down reading passages, especially those really dense, hard to understand historical passages. The writing section, likewise, we employ critical reading strategies. So you still need to know what the main idea is. You still need to know how to clearly convey the main idea. When I teach the essay for the ACT, there's a lot of revision in the process because if, I'll tell my students if there's a way that the sentence can be interpreted differently than what you mean, you need to go back and revise it for clarity. I try to break down all the grammar rules into just the essentials that are going to be covered on the test the most frequently, so the high yield questions. And like I said, I try to distill everything so that they're very, very easy for students to remember. And then a lot of it is just pattern recognition. As I said, it's the more students recognize, like every time you see a sentence that starts with a phrase, expect to see a comma. Every time you see, a dash at one end of an interrupting phrase, expect to see a dash. So.
Anya, your voice is little breaking between.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. What was the last part when you said if you say a dash at the end, if you could repeat that part?
If you see a dash at the first, at one end of an interrupting phrase, make sure you see a dash at the other end. Okay. So the grammar rules are not very, very complex on the SAT. It's fairly easy to distill them and condense them, but a lot of it is still related to the critical reading. So we take a two-pronged approach with that.
Okay, perfect. Before I ask the two other questions that we have, we have a lot of people asking how the Turito courses work. So I'll give a brief overview on that. Typically, the test prep courses that we offer, the SAT ACT ones, which I said are part of the mini group coaching, have last anywhere between 3 to 3.5 month long course. They are weekly, 3 days a week, usually in the evening, which is post school, usually 5:36. That's the typical time they start. So the 3 days a week, it will be 2 hours every day. So 1 hour of English and 1 hour of math. And we have two different tutors that teach, and the whole point is we have experts from these two different topics that teach these topics. So the two tutors, so 1 hour English, 1 hour math, every alternate day is when you'll have for the SAT. And then if it's a ACT prep, then we have one extra day of 1 hour where the science part of the ACT is taught. And then it's a very structured course every week. Every day is a specific topic that gets taught. And then at the end of a couple of weeks, there is a test that the students have to take, and then it gets discussed. So the progress is tracked on almost on a weekly basis for these students. So that's how the courses for Turito function. We have one question where they're asking, how do you choose between ACT and ACT, like SAT and ACT? How do you choose between those two? So either of you, which would like to answer that?
I can answer that. I've actually done a few webinars, where that is the discussion of it. How do you know? So what I always recommend is that if English is your stronger of the subject matter, do the SAT. The way it's set up is very much more traditional. The passages, the grammar rules, if you're an expert at that, you're definitely going to score really well on that. I've had a lot of students super score on the reading section in the ACT because they're also very strong readers, understanding the types of questions, how to break it down. When it comes to math, if you're an expert math, you will probably score much higher on the ACT than you will on the SAT. Because the math questions and the SAT are split up between calculator and non-calculator. If you're a strong math student, go for the ACT, you'll score high. If you are more of a traditional math student, then I would say do the SAT. So again, the SAT is more traditional testing and passages and things. The ACT is more academic benchmarks. But if English is your thing, SAT, if math's your thing, you'll probably score higher on the ACT.
Oh, alrighty. And yeah, and we do have a demo that we give with the Turito in case you guys want to take a just a class with us and see how we do. You can always reach out to us and we can schedule you for a quick demo. So we have time for a couple more questions. Just I have two here. One is my son is in 8th grade. Could you please advise what he has to start doing now, so he will get into the mode of looking and learning this way of handling questions and answering them. Also, please recommend some courses or link of courses he can take over the summer before getting into high school. So how basically how do they start, and advise on what mode of learning and looking can they start doing for both math, and what can his son start doing for both math and science? Sorry, math and English. Yeah.
As I said, I would still always recommend read as much as possible. In my 15 plus years of tutoring, I've had very, very, very few students who are avid readers. Most of the students, even the ones who have really, really strong math and science skills, most of them who come to me for tutoring are not big readers. So there are a lot of benefits to developing critical reading skills, not just in the verbal section.
And then can you speak a little loudly? Maybe your voice is like in and out, just a little louder.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Closer to the camera.
Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I was just saying that I have very few students in my career. I've had very few students.
No, your voice is still on and off. I think it's.
I'll just I'll try again and just read as much as possible.
Unless you want to join in again, yeah.
Especially high level reading materials. So I recommend a few periodicals that students can read for free. You should definitely be reading some of the classic novels, literary fiction. As I said, I don't have very many students who've ever come to me who've been really strong readers, even math and science students who want to get ahead and are very advanced. They tend not to be strong readers. So the stronger your reading skills, generally the better you're going to do in all of the subjects, even if you are not a really great math or science student.
Okay, Anya, we could barely hear you. So people asking if you can type that answer in the chat. But whatever I heard, I'm going to reiterate till she types out the answer. And then we can have Laila answer the question of the math section of it. So what she was saying was, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the more you read, the more familiarized the kids will familiarize themselves with concepts and grammar and have the fluency to read through the passages and understand them. She is recommending that classic books as well help a lot. And Anya, please, if you can just type that answer in, that would be really helpful. And Laila, what would you answer to this because there's one more math related question. Actually, it says, how can you shorten the amount of work done depending on the question and or formula in accordance to the math section of the test?
Well, that one, let me get to that one first. Basically, that's part of the strategy. That's what we're teaching you for test prep, is how to answer those questions quickly, strategically, and do the minimum steps required to get to the answer. So we have different strategies, like I said, like the plug and chug, the 2-step strategies, the 3-step strategies, how to extract the information that you need to come to the correct answer quickly without spending, more than a minute on it. That honestly will come with practice and learning how to do the strategies, which is something that is not taught in school, because in school, like I said, and being a math teacher at a school, we tell students you have to do every step. You have to show your work. That's not how you take these tests. These tests are quick, short methods of answering, like knowing that, okay, this is asking me this. So I need to look for these numbers and get to these numbers first so I can apply it to finding the final answer. As for preparing math, if you're in 8th grade or so, the thing about math is it builds on foundations. So every year that you're taking math, you're building on what you learned the year before. Honestly, I would say math, if you're doing math, definitely start with the reading first. You can do that right away, get into intelligent reading, high level reading, like Anya said. But for the math, you're kind of stuck where you have to wait till you're taught some of it at school and get to that level of math. However, you can do, little practices on like IXL or things like that, where you're just daily doing math problems, like just keeping up your basic math skills. But to start studying for the math, most students start in 10th grade for the SAT and ACT, because that's when you actually reach that level of math at school level to be able to do those SAT, ACT questions. Were there any other math or science ones?
No, and I think that also answers, Laila, the question. We had one person asking, he's saying, I'm in 10th grade, what can I start doing to prep for the SAT for next year? Any thing that you might want to add? He's saying, he or she, sorry, and the PSAT coming up in the junior year. So what kind of prep can
Okay,
they
so
start?
I would start right away. Write
Oh,
down,
right.
write down all the formulas that you've learned so far. Write down all the concepts you've learned so far. Compare them to the list of concepts and formulas you need for the SAT. And even though you haven't quite come to the final part, like the higher level math questions, you can still do 3/4 of those questions, whether it's a PSAT or or the SAT. The PSAT is designed with where it stops at junior level math. The PSAT is, it's where they get the merit scholars. It's where you get, if you get score really high, you can start applying for scholarships locally and things. But the PSAT is more like a benchmark to see. I would say if you're going to take the PSAT, you can also take an ACT version of it. And if you're really just taking it to see where you're at, use it as a benchmark for yourself to see which test you like better, more than I have to score perfectly on the PSAT, otherwise I won't score on the SAT, because the PSAT and SAT are not the same. The SAT is a higher level, more complex questions. But the PSAT will let you know if you like the SAT. I think that was the question.
Yes, and I'm going to, and I did type out her answer, so I'm going to read it out in case anyone has not had a chance to read it. She's saying, what she was saying earlier was that I was saying that I recommend students read as much as possible. I have had very few students coming to me for tutoring when they said that they are avid readers. Where did it go? Even if they are advanced. Oh, yeah, hold on one second. Yeah, I have had very few students come to me for tutoring when they were very avid readers, even if they're advanced math and science students. Critical reading skills help in every area of academics. Have students find topics they're interested in and read long form articles online on those topics. They should also have a general awareness of current events, because a lot of historical passages are easier to understand if they have some background information on political issues. So I guess we can take one more question, which is for math, for sat math, and this actually two more. One, I'll take one this, and then we have one other one as well, and then so this one is for sat math. Taking AP math, physics help, or regular level is okay for sat questions. Laila, if you can answer that.
Regular level's fine. This is a standardized test. It's not made for students that are guaranteed to take APs or taking advanced like calculus. There is no calculus on there. So it's not really, it's doesn't do you anything. It's a test made for everybody that goes through the general math courses up to 11th grade and a little bit of 12th.
Okay, perfect. And I'll take the last question. Anya has responded to this. I'm going to read it out, and then Laila, if you have anything to add, you can add to that as well. We have AA who is saying ACT equal to SAT plus science, or science equal to biology, physics, and chemistry. To which Anya has responded that there are few subtle differences between the SAT and ACT, which we did, Laila as well has pointed that out. So yeah, so anything specific, and the SAT incorporates science in the reading section, both cover biology, chemistry, physics, earth sciences, and spaces. So I suppose the question is, when it comes to passages, when it comes to science, what kind of topics should these kids be aware of? What general topics should they be, aware of that they would get covered in these exams?
So the science section's more is actually, if you're reading skills and you practice the reading sections, the science section is pretty much the reading section with extra graphs and a few math problems. You do not actually need to be as skilled in any particular science to be able to do the science sections. They are reading sections. And yes, they do cover some basic wording, but a lot of that is basic science that students will cover depending, what type of school you go to. Usually your last year middle school, but by 10th grade, when you've taken all the basic sciences that you're required, and it doesn't matter if you did earth science or you did, they are made for generally students who have to take just the basic levels of sciences that schools require. And again, they are very much like a reading section with graphs and a little bit of math.
Perfect. Alrighty. So that's it. We will be concluding out here. I just wanted to quickly, remind everybody of what we discussed. So basically, what our tutors have been trying to say is that there's no need to panic, correct? When it comes to these exams, practice and being mindful would help kids to definitely help kids to navigate these exams. And at Turito, we are here to help with our experts to work with each student individually, and work with all the individual questions and issues, concepts that they might find themselves in difficulty with. Having said that, we do have a demo that we offer where people can come in, kids can come and take few classes with us. We have a trial that they can take, attend a class with us, and see the Turito difference. Parents can see that too. So please feel to reach out. And all of this is online, everything is virtual, there's no in-person. All we would do is we need an email ID, and they will send you a link to sign in. It will be 3 days a week. You can do a 1 week trial. It will be 3 classes in that week that the kids can attend to see how we basically teach and get an understanding of our classes. So yeah, so if anyone is interested, do reach out to us, check out our website. We have all of those details available as well. I wanted to thank everybody for being here. Laila, Anya, thank you so much for walking us through these challenges and how we can work with the kids. I would thank all the parents and the students who are out here. We certainly hope that we've been able to lift some, anxiety, if there is any, or give you guys some clarity about, how to navigate these tests. Thank you so much for coming and being here and attending the session. We look forward to have you guys here for our next one, which we'll be announcing very soon. So thank you all. Thank you, Laila. Thank you, Anya. Thank you, everybody, for attending the session. I will be closing this out. And if you have any more questions, yeah, you can. I'm going to type out my email ID in the chat, so you can always reach out to me with any questions or anything that you guys want to have. So that's my email ID. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.